Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 12th, 2023 regular meeting of the Webster Groves Board of Adjustment. John, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Debbie Solberg,
Here.
John Burse, here. Andy Sprague, here. Charles Beneke,
Here.
BJ Cooper. Here.
This evening, we have 4 cases. We will take each one separately in order. The order of presentation will be that the city staff will present testimony regarding the facts of the case. Then the applicant or his or her representative will have the opportunity to present their request to the board and answer questions. Then we'll ask for anyone who's in favor to speak. We'll also ask for anyone who is opposed to speak. The board will close the public session. We will move into executive session where we will have discussion and make a decision. The proceedings are recorded, so we ask you to come to the podium and speak clearly and one at a time. We will vote on these applications tonight for a decision. Approval takes 4 out of 5 board members, and please try not to be repetitive or redundant in your comments. John, would you please read the powers relative to the requested variances?
Absolutely. Powers relative to variations when by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property as of September 20th, 1956, or by reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary exceptional situations or a condition of a specific piece of property, which condition is not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this zoning code would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional and undue hardship upon the owner of such property. The board is hereby empowered to authorize upon an appeal relating to such property a variation from such strict application so as to relieve such difficulties or hardships.
Thank you. Would you please read the first docket into the record?
I'm sorry.
Would you please read docket 2398 into the record?
Yes. Let's see, a petition submitted by Kyle Lang, Kyle's Landscape Service and the Fence Factory on behalf of Jim and Jan Regnier for an application for variance from section 53.196 section I of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 2 feet from the maximum 4 feet allowed for a side yard fence in order to construct approximately 8 linear feet of up to 6 feet or 6-foot fence. The property is located at 319 Plant Avenue within the A3 10,000 square foot residence district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager?
Before we put on testimony, I would ask that the exhibits 1 through 10, which are listed there, be noted and included in the record for the purposes of this hearing.
Thank you very much.
We would call Mara Perry to testify.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 319 Plant Avenue?
Yes, I am.
In which zoning, is it within the city limits?
Yes, it is.
And in which zoning district?
The A3 10,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket 2398?
The applicant's requesting a variance of 2 feet from the maximum 4 feet allowed for a side yard fence in order to construct approximately 8 linear feet of up to 6-foot fence.
And which municipal code sections apply to that request?
So the code section relates to 53.196I. The fence height section in general allows 4-foot fences on every part of the property. But it does have, notwithstanding the aforementioned height requirements, Fences on side yard lot lines may be erected to an equal height as that permitted by right on immediately adjacent lot lines of abutting properties developed with residential structures. However, in no case shall a fence taller than 4 feet be permitted beyond the front building line of the main building on the lot where the fence is constructed.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes, so the existing conditions of the property, the house was built in 2007. You can see it highlighted in yellow on the survey on the slide. The property, when you evaluate where a fence can go on the property, there's a few different code sections to review. The code allows for 4-foot fences anywhere on the property. For a fence that's taller than 4 feet, it can be located in the rear yard, which is established by the rearmost portion of the back of the house. That area allows up to 6 feet in that portion of the rear yard. Or you can also use the buildable area of the lot. So any area that could have an addition added onto a house allows in the code, you can go up to an 8-foot in height fence. So there's 2 green overlapping boxes that you can see here. You're allowed to have a 6-foot fence in that first light green box, and then that secondary box allows it to go up to 8 feet. This particular property had a permit that was issued to it. It was approved July 7th of 2023. That permit requested a fence that was up to 48 inches in height. So the 4 foot that's allowed anywhere on the property. That fence permit did not include a gate. It included a fence along the outside perimeter of the property. That fence permit was approved with the highlighted fence that you can see in yellow, approved at 4 foot in height with the image that you can see in the permit application showing a fence type, which was a wrought iron open fence.
So that's not what the property really
Say that again?
is. That's just an illustrative picture. That's not like the property.
Oh, the photograph?
Yeah.
The photograph is a sample of the fence type that they were proposing.
Okay.
So when the inspectors went out to inspect the site, there was a gate that had been built and installed that went along the side of the property in the side yard. And the gate itself, with the arch that was included in it, went from 5 feet 6 inches tall at the outside edges and then arched in the center at 7 feet. You can see here, it's the red area. There's a little tiny line that shows where the gate was installed. The area that's in red is the area that in the code is allowed to be up to only 4 feet. And the area in green is where it can go up to 8 feet tall. So this is a photograph of the gate that was built. The dashed green line is identifying the fence that was on the fence permit that was approved at 4 feet. And it's kind of approximating through the photograph where that 4 foot fence is. The applicants submitted a diagram showing that it's 5 feet 6 inches tall at either of the far ends of that particular gate. And then at a key point at the top point, it's at 7 feet. So there's an 8 foot area from the fence that was built at 4 feet tall going towards the house that is not allowed to be taller than 4 feet. So the request is for a variance for that section of that gate to be allowed to remain there in that location at the height that it has been built. There's another photograph in the packet. And then just to put on the record, staff had reviewed some options for being able to reuse that existing fence and replace it in another location, pretty close to where it was before. If it's put at a diagonal from that corner of the house, in order for it to meet that 8 foot setback, the entire gate would be able to be built with a small 4 foot section connecting it back to the side yard fence. So staff did give that as an option. And then the variance was submitted.
City has nothing further at this time.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mara?
No.
Who's here tonight regarding docket 2398? Would you please come to the podium? Okay, please raise your right hand, state your name, and then I'll swear you in.
Kyle Lang,
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes,
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
okay. So I'm Kyle Lang, as I mentioned. I had done this project for Jim and Jan Regnier. The project started at the beginning months of COVID. And as the project went on, it progressed quite a bit. The scope of the work.
So
Sure.
did you initially pull a permit?
We did not, the scope of the work initially was for retaining wall and for tree work.
Mhm.
So we have Reliable Tree Care, Kyle's Landscape, and the Fence Factory. So we worked with Yvonne Steingrumi beforehand. Particularly on this project, they always send her a courtesy email before we start a project,
Mhm.
just because of the ins and outs of the rules, and we've actually done some work for the city as well, a couple years back. But
Sure.
yes, and we've been a licensed contractor for many years, but have certified arborist on staff. But to move forward with this, we're first called out to remove some trees for a future pool. So made Yvonne aware of the situation. She gave her blessing on it. So we moved forward with that. And then
Being,
Yvonne Steingrumi, the park superintendent,
okay,
city forester for Webster Groves. And so generally when we start a project, we work at the back of the yard and work our way out to the street. So we worked in conjunction with Reinhold Electric, pool specialist, a contractor for a pergola. So there's 5 or 6 trades that we're in. So as we backed out through the project, and
the scope of work.
the scope of work began to grow. So we did, to answer your question about the permit, initially we did, we pulled a permit for a retaining wall in the back. And at that time, the
What
scope.
date was that?
Is this germane, is the retaining wall germane to the fence, or are you just giving us sort of what the work you've done in this property?
Right, I thought BJ kind of just asked for a frame of reference of,
Okay.
to understand the whole situation.
So the retaining wall was before this fence permit in July, correct?
Correct, we did the tree work and then we, started moving forward with a couple other cleanup projects to prepare for the future installation of the pool. And, as we discussed things, we thought the back of the property was, in a situation where the slope and there was some erosion issue. And the Regniers throughout the whole project have always been very conscious of the neighbors around them, have gone above and beyond. There's letters in the packet.
How many letters do you have in?
Uh, I want to say there's probably, I think there's 5 or 6.
I believe there are 5.
5. Thanks, Reen.
Sure, sure.
But we got to meet them because the project lasted like over 18 months. There's a lot involved, Rhino Electric for aesthetics, and for the value of the city. We brought down the overhead power lines. We had them buried underneath, which didn't just entail the Regniers
This is
property.
just a small piece of a much bigger project.
Correct. So the project progressed. We got the permits for the retaining wall. And as we backed our way out through the project, the Regnier's got gotten a dog in this time period, 2 dogs. So the safety, of course, of the neighbors and for their dogs. This became we had a temporary gate that would pull out in the morning and then put back as the contractors would come and go. And so as we started to back our way to the street, as we generally do when we finish a project, we started some discussions about a gate. So the fence is, we reworked the existing fence, but then they also have the automatic pool cover that is in compliance with the
Yeah,
rule.
we're just talking about the gate at this point, right?
Right, so we started moving backwards and we started talking about and discussing the
What are
gate.
you specifically asking us for?
So we just need, as Mara had showed, do you mind pulling exhibit 2 back up, Mara, please?
Are you asking to keep that, or are you asking to change it to what?
Well, the gate wasn't part of the scope.
The gate was not part of the initial
And,
scope.
and that's really the problem here. It-
Right,
It
because
got
it
in,
wasn't
it got
included
into
in
the
the
project,
permit.
but it never was permitted.
Correct.
And so that's the issue. And so now the variance is that the height of it at the end of the gate is over what is described into the ordinance.
Correct.
That's the variance that
Okay,
you're
so-
asking.
So can we
and
talk
so
about,
if-
can we
if
talk
did
about the
have-
reason for the variance and your hardship here?
Right,
To answer your question, there's not only just the height, there's 2 options. The height,
right.
I guess two potential solutions. There's the height that
There's the
you just
height.
discussed, but then the width
the
of the
width.
setback.
Exactly.
So as we see in this exhibit 2, to put a gate on a radius, and we talk about existing conditions, the concrete driveway was in
Right.
place.
Right.
I'm take accountability for not submitting additional permissions and above and a second fence permit or gate.
You
And
goofed up.
in some cities,
Right.
there's
Right.
townships, a
Right.
gate is separate from the fence. So,
Right.
but all that said.
Yeah.
As we look at the option here, it's a personal preference, in anybody's frame of reference or judgment, but
Right.
how many fences have we, gates have we seen that are, perpendicular to a home or, on an angle as such
Kind of
that's
slope on this
proposed?
or anything?
No, it's pretty level.
Yes,
It's,
it's flat. Yeah.
so as far as safety to go around that corner when people were backing out, pulling out, we didn't feel like that proposed, which as Mara discussed, we discussed options, and I wouldn't be here. I respect your time if I didn't feel like, the Regniers, myself, we really, have gone above and beyond to, aesthetically, architecturally. As you look through more of the pictures, I have an, on-staff architect that also was a Webster resident, that designed it in compliance with the house and the scale of the project. So if it was a ranch home, I would say that the scale would sit, but this is a 2-story home. It sits 86 feet off the street.
Right.
We carefully selected this wrought iron material that'll stand the test of time. It'll span the width of their existing driveway when the home was built 13, 15 years ago, roughly. And you can see through it, as you can see in the pictures. It's not a privacy, it's not obtrusive. And that's what we're asking. It's a very costly endeavor to move the fence to, it's a custom fabricated gate. If the driveway was narrower and
If they forfeit the gate, would that just be not usable or?
we can't with the dogs. And then the general.
No, I think his question is, if you had to take this gate off, and replace it with a gate that met the height setbacks, would the Rainiers have,
Be completely out of pocket. for
Right.
this Gate,
Yes.
which was.
It's a $15,000 to $17,000 custom gate, with the opener. So there's underground, electric that's tied to it for the opener and the sensor for it to go in and out.
You
So-
said you had an architect that looked at this and came up with your design and all that. Did he go into the criteria of Webster Groves fence and design criteria to?
With it, the way on the left, and some of the photos don't show it, but right here's, the left side of their driveway. I wouldn't even call it a handshake agreement, but they, beautified their landscape on the left of their
Mhm.
driveway. So their shrubs, if you look from the street, it appears that their property line extends further than the, would meet the setback. But when you get the black and white and facts of the survey, it shrinks that area. And then with the rear entry garage and the gate sits 86 feet. It's at the furthest point of the home, the rear left corner of the home,
Right.
86 feet off the property. So when it sits back that, a 4.5 foot as far as architectural value, would look like a micro machine. I mean, it would look way out of whack on a 2-story.
All right,
home.
so to kind of bring us back into this, because I know we're
Sure.
talking about aesthetics and all that.
Right.
The issue in front of this board right now is that there is a code section that allows for fence up to 4 feet. Explain to this board why more than 4 feet is required, or why it would be a hardship to limit you to 4 feet. That's what we're looking for. We need a hardship, why that code section would limit you and this property.
Right, and my question to your professional that did this, did he consult with you as to
Hold on,
why
Chuck.
he,
I-
why
Chuck,
he made it that high?
No, we just want,
another question.
Yeah, Chuck, let's not worry about the aesthetics right now. We're worried about that code section and we're wondering what the hardship is. That's in front of this board and we want to focus on that.
Right.
Right,
I think one of the specific hardships is that's a unique piece to that specific area. Am I correct there?
correct, absolutely.
Okay, and why is that? Can you expound on that?
Yeah, so when the home was originally built, there's a covered patio in the back, and the railing on that deck was designed to mimic, as is in your packet, the gate was designed to play off of that or to tie everything together.
So is it specifically built for that particular spot?
Yes,
So it's unique. It's not one you just go grab off the shelf at Home Depot.
oh, absolutely. No, it was a 50, like I mentioned, it was a custom fabricated gate, $15,000 to $17,000.
Okay.
And if the driveway was in that, if it happened to, and going back to, I totally agree that, it was an oversight, you know, that I admit to that. I'm not, you know, dancing around that topic, but, if the driveway was set back in, but if I was to meet that side setback, if I was to put the, you know, saw cut a square in front, inside the middle of the driveway, would look ridiculous and it would become another safety standpoint. But, to Regniers not having dogs, these golden doodles are hypergenic, you know, very hyper.
That really
There-
doesn't have anything to do with what we're looking at specifically. I mean, at least one undue hardship I see is that it got put in somehow, and whether that was their
no.
architect's fault or not. Any which way, we're at this. point.
We're in this situation, right?
So, do you have anything else that you would think would be a hardship?
As far as the height, the side setback, like we mentioned, the driveway was existing to go through, to cut 4 feet off of their driveway, 3 or 4 feet off of their whole driveway for 100 feet, you know, would, and then narrowing their path to get back and forth to their house, going around a radius. Cause it's rear entry, but it's also rear side entry. So you need that room. So as shown in this exhibit, we didn't feel like that was adequate space to make that turn, either going in and going out, that was more apt to get hit. But, you know, just being real honest with you with the height, back to you, Peter, on the height, restrictions, you know, it was an oversight. As we were designing it, like we talked about with the archect,
That's my point. It was an oversight.
we looked at the
Right.
scale of the project, the scale of the home, and felt that fit, you know, filthiest.
The architect.
Phil Prang is a designer, architect that works for him. He just works for me in-house. Mhm.
So your company pulled the permit, but didn't go back and amend the permit for the gate?
Correct.
Okay. So really, you're liable for the costs of fixing any work, not the owner.
Right. That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have anything more you'd like to add?
Sure.
No, there's other gates in the documents in the packet.
That's not that's not the purview of this board to go back and attempt to correct things that may have been put in when the code was different.
Right. So since the gate's in, we would appreciate the side setback, rather than taking the gate down. which would be substantial to,
Hmm.
remove the gate and, as BJ brought up, a store-bought aluminum gate to span that width is not gonna hold up. It's gonna, break down over time. Aluminum gates just aren't made to span 13, 14 feet, where this was all designed, to carry the load of that 13+ feet
And it's
width.
an automatic opening
Yes.
gate. Alright.
Correct.
Anybody have any questions for him?
Okay, so no one else has any more questions for Mr. Lang?
No.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2398? Hearing none, seeing none. If there's anyone who'd like to speak in opposition of docket 2398? If not, we'll move to board discussion.
If I could, before, this isn't really opposition or anything, I just wanted to provide a little bit more information. We've discussed this in the past. There is a law that that came into effect in August of 2021 that deals with physical security measures. It's a state level statute that preempts local jurisdiction, and it limits what cities can regulate as far as physical security measures. And now it doesn't define physical security measures, but as it could apply to a fence, it's worth telling you that everything is preempted by state law except what a village, town, city, or county may regulate is aesthetics, access to public right-of-way, a sidewalk, or utility easement, structural soundness, or changes to drainage of the property. And so those are the things that we can discuss and we should discuss as far as what the city has authority to regulate. To that end, and I'd urge you to ask questions about it, my opinion is that the aesthetics may be the only portion of that applies in this situation. It doesn't define aesthetics, and so aesthetics could, is obviously the looks, but it could include things like height. We don't have a ruling as far as that goes, and so we don't know that's how a court would interpret it. But I bring that up to you only because it could place the city in some way of liability.
Okay, but when the statute talks about physical security measures, does it define that?
It does not.
So it's not, I'm a little confused as to what our elected officials in Jefferson City meant by this.
As you should be.
Okay,
I think it was
I mean-
intended to be vague.
I
but-
mean, is this
Sure.
barbed wire, allowing barbed wire, allowing
Yeah, 6749.
electric fences, I mean, the fence code.
There's another portion that deals with electric fences, so this doesn't,
Doesn't modify that or allow that.
yeah, correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's still, safety is still a major issue and the city is allowed to regulate for fire code and health code and those sorts of things. That's not a problem. But the only thing, I mean, if you want to use context, it talks about legislation regarding regulation of physical security measures around private property.
Okay.
No definition. So take that how you will. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but I would say use that when interpreting your powers tonight.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bontrager about the physical security measure statute?
No. I'd like to mine that a little bit more. Does a
We
4-foot
can take
fence,
it under submission if we were
does a 4-foot fence, really represent in the eyes of that legislation a security measure? I mean, one could hurdle over that.
Right, but the code is determined, the building code is determined that a 4-foot high fence is adequate around a swimming pool, for example, for safety purposes, even though, as you say, it could be scaled, but I guess the assumption is it's only going to be scaled by people who know better than to, aren't going to inadvertently fall in the pool and drown.
Yeah, and the only thing I can give you is by way of guidance there is that they've specifically preempted this without adding their own legislation to regulate, with the idea that individuals should make that decision for themselves.
Okay, fair enough.
motion to go into.
But we've gone in, okay, motion to go into, we're going into closed session. Could I have a motion regarding docket 2398 so we can start discussion?
I move approval of docket 2398.
A second?
Second.
So what do you think?
So now we're in executive.
Yes, now we're in executive session. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, the problem is that I really struggle to find the hardship here. The aesthetics is not a hardship. And we approve a lot of things that are out of compliance for hardships. Lay of the land, drainage, all sorts of issues. I fail to find that here. I think the city has offered a reasonable alternative to this. The fact that you may be able to find other non-compliant fences in Webster Groves is utterly irrelevant to this question. It is not part of what we're doing here. What we're looking at is whether this is a personal preference, as it actually been stated. And that's not what we're here to approve. We approve variances based upon a serious problem that the homeowner has. And I think that's really important for this board, because if we fail to do that, we become an aesthetics board, and that's not what we are. I think it's a mistake. And I understand that this is an inconvenience to the homeowner and to the builders. But I don't think it's in the best interest to approve this.
I also think, Randy, in granting a variance for it, we create a situation where whenever there's neglect in a building permit and scope change, then that becomes, the answer, get a variance and, avoid the pain of, repairing the defective work.
Well, that goes to my point earlier, is that, you had a professional on staff who should have gone back to the ordinance and advised you as to, what the ordinance is, and that he was designing a gate that didn't comply, and what those ramifications could or could not be. And specifically as to what, Mr. Bruntrager's point is, we're not ruling on what the aesthetics are. My point was not the aesthetics, but as to how the ordinance is written and how you should have been told that by your professional to say, look, I'm doing a gate for you, but it doesn't comply with, what the city of Webster Groves is laid out. And I agree with my colleagues here to my right, is that we look at a lot of these different fences, but in many cases, when they come to us, we had one not too long ago where they came to us, but it followed the ordinances. And so I'm in agreement with my colleagues to my right, so.
BJ?
I completely disagree. I think this board is to help when mistakes happen. It's an unfortunate extra step that they need to take, but what does this hurt anybody? It's already built. It looked completely sound to me. Did that even seem to anybody? I mean, to tell him he has to rip down a
That's
fence
relevant.
and put it at a sideway angle for what particular purpose? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a property, it's already out there and it looks fine. So aesthetics or not, it just seems like a big waste of everybody's money and time on this.
Does anyone else have any comments? Okay, let's call the question. All in favor of docket 2398, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Please poll the board.
Okay, Debbie Salvo,
No.
John Burse, no. BJ Pubelo,
Aye.
Randy Sprague.
No,
Chuck,
Oh, Chuck.
No.
sorry.
I'm sorry, your variance request has been denied. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next step. John, will you please read docket 2399 into the record?
Yes, a petition submitted by Jenny Bristow and Jeremy Weichel, thank you. For an application for variance from section 53 .078 N of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves, the applicant is requesting a variance of 1.8 feet from the minimum required 5-foot north side yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing detached garage located 3.2 feet from the north side lot line at the subject property. The applicant is requesting a second variance of 6.5 feet from the minimum required 10-foot east rear yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing detached garage located 3.5 feet from the east rear lot line at the subject property. The property is located at 50 Gray Avenue within the A4, and that text is overlapping.
7,500 square foot residence
you.
district.
Yeah.
Oh, the technology.
Thank you.
And that is what we're here.
Exactly.
Mr. Bontrager?
Before we begin, I would ask that the exhibits listed there 1 through 9 be included in the record for the purpose of this hearing. And then we would call Amara Perry to testify.
Who has previously been sworn. Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
And in what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development.
What are your duties in that position?
To administer and execute zoning regulations?
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 50 Gray Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that within city limits?
Yes, it is.
And in which zoning district?
The A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2399?
So I'm going to point out, and you all know, I've had a lot of these over the last couple months, more than normal. So I flipped some numbers when advertising for this one. So I wanted to put, we did have a sign on the property. So if anyone wanted to be aware, the Board of Adjustment was meeting this evening to view it. I think I just flipped every one of the numbers in the reverse. So I'm putting on the slides here the two requests. You'll see that they're actually, in one case, it's much smaller of a variance than I had posted, and on the other one is slightly larger. So in both cases, it's for an existing garage. But you'll note here, the applicant is requesting a variance of actually 3.5 feet from the minimum required 5-foot north side yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing detached garage located 1.5 feet from the north side lot line at the subject property. And the second variance is the applicant is requesting a second variance of 3.7 feet from the minimum required 10-foot east rear yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing detached garage located 6.3 feet from the east rear lot line at the subject property.
So, excuse me, Mr. Bontrager, there's no problem with us acting on the request as intended.
Correct. The code sections still apply. The request itself is substantially similar. The numbers have changed slightly. And so it's been properly noticed. It is properly before this board tonight.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Mara.
No, you're fine. I asked him that question this afternoon as I was working on my PowerPoint. So the section that applies to this is 53.078 Development Standards for Accessory Structures, letter N. Accessory buildings may not be built in a rear yard, but such accessory buildings, may be built in a rear yard, but such accessory buildings shall not occupy more than 30% of the rear yard, shall not be nearer than 5 feet to any side or rear lot line, except that when the garage is entered from an alley, which is not applicable in this case, or when the garage is located, observed except for reverse corner lots, the garage shall not be located closer than 10 feet to the rear property line. This is a reverse corner lot, which essentially means the front of the house faces one street, the rest of the block all faces the other street. So their backyard is adjacent to a neighbor's side yard.
Yeah.
So in that case, that's the requirement for the 10-foot versus the 5-foot. Most often when you see these variances, it's a 5-foot and a 5-foot that we're addressing. So I'm going to identify the property here on the survey. The house was built in 1903 with the garage built in 1940. You can see the existing location of the garage. It is on the northern property line, right adjacent to the northern property line, with a driveway that accesses off of Gray and has the doors facing to Gray. And the request is essentially to allow that garage to remain in place. Although the garage did have a structural alteration done to it. When there is a structural alteration on a garage, which is an accessory structure to any of those walls, adding a new window, adding a new door, changing a structural element in a wall, it's supposed to come and get a Board of Adjustment variance first in order for it to be addressed. In this case, there was a structural alteration. Staff noticed when we were doing our regular inspections just in the city in general, went in to verify that it actually was a structural alteration. And so we asked the applicants to come in to go through the process to obtain the proper variance. It is also in a National Register Historic District, so it will need to go to the Architecture Review Board for any changes. But you can see here, the existing garage is located 1.5 feet from the north property line and at its closest point, 6.3 feet from the eastern property line. So those are the two requested setbacks. The green line highlighted here would be where they'd have to move the garage should they have to take the whole thing down and come into compliance. And there are photos in your packet. This was the garage before. It had two separate garage doors and then there was just a member between them. This is some photos that are in the packet of the repairs that were made, which included a new beam across so that only one garage door could be put back in its place.
So does the new beam constitute the structural alteration?
It
Okay.
does.
What was that being permitted?
That is getting a permit. So we have to do the variance first.
Okay,
Then they will get a permit. When they get the permit, it will go to the Architecture Review Board
Got it.
because of the fact that it's in a,
Location of the house.
yeah, because of the location in a National Register Historic District.
And I'm assuming the garage is a contributing building to the.
Yes, it does show the garage is being contributing. Even if it wasn't contributing, it still goes because of the property itself.
Anything else to add?
Nothing else to add.
Any questions for Mara? Who's here tonight for docket 2399? Would you please raise your right hand, state your name, and I'll swear you in.
Jenny Bristow.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I sure do.
Thank
Yes.
you very much. Please go ahead.
Yes, so we purchased 50 Gray back in 2017, and we are no stranger to the permitting process of doing projects in Webster. I very, very much appreciate all of your work and your time, but I don't really feel like we should be here today. And let me tell you a little bit why. So we went through significant structural work, lots of permits, architectural review board, all of that fun stuff just last year for the main house. This we decided to tackle because the front of the garage was literally falling off. There's pictures of how a terrible shape the beams were in. That center structure in between the two doors was literally two 2x4s that were fully rotted. You could move them. So in our mind, it was not a structural change to the building. We even purchased a door that was the exact same color and style as the old door and put all of the new beams in up above, all of the aesthetics in order to exactly match what was there previously. So we knew whenever we purchased this house that there was quite a bit of drama with previous homeowners that had tried to do stuff with the garage. It didn't work. So we would love to redo the garage and put, you know, some in-law living space up above, but we know we can't mess with the garage. It's sacred because of where it is on the property. So in our mind, this was 100% just making it a safe structure and aesthetically matching what was there before. I also will note that many homeowners West Cedar and on Gray have gone from 2 doors to 1 large door, which is another reason why, again, we did not think that it was considered something structural that would require a permit, because we talked with those homeowners and they did not get a permit and said that it wasn't required because it was an accessory building. And if I'm wrong, again, we're happy to get whatever permits are required. And also the header that was across the top was already there. We simply reinforced it by putting another header up against it and removing the rotted wood. So in our mind, we did not hire an architect or do anything to structurally change the building.
And you're not enlarging the garage.
We are
right? You're
not.
Making it slightly more usable, especially if you have teenage drivers who might hit that, that support that really isn't holding up anything, right?
Correct.
And the garage has been in place for, 80 years. So, anyone else have any more questions for, Ms. Bristol?
So the entire
So-
footprint of the garage does not change.
Nothing is changing as far as the
Gotcha.
footprint, no.
So you went ahead and then you laminated another beam to the existing header above the garage door.
We did. We actually had a city inspector come out because we got a stop work order and he looked at it and he was like, this is perfect. It doesn't require permitting. Pulled the stop work order and said, keep going. But then we had to come in because of this meeting and then the architectural review board, which again, we're super familiar with. But we had a city inspector already come out the day we got the
Okay.
stop work order and he
'Cause I've
inspected
had
everything.
Experience with the city inspectors of
Yes.
Webster.
Mhm.
so
Yes,
I
they know
that
us.
routine.
Yes.
So were there any other structural issues besides?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, that is the
all right,
only
so
thing that
had
was,
nothing to do with any of the finishes or anything that had anything to do with the.
no,
exterior?
it just is part of like, I'll say the exact same thing to architectural review board. Like we fully respect the Webster permitting process. I understand why it's here. And so we on purpose matched everything just so that way we'd have continuity of aesthetics.
Okay, so we're doing things right where the garage currently exists, where it's sitting now.
Yes.
So you're over the setback lines. And so what you want from us is to keep it where it is and approve where it is, even though it's over. the-
Correct. Correct. Basically tell us we don't have to tear down a perfectly good garage and move it 3 feet.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
Um,
Anyone
I-
else? Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience or online who's here for in favor of docket 2399? Hearing none and seeing none, is there anyone who's in opposition of docket 2399? Hearing none and seeing none, the board will now move to closed session. Can we have a motion to start discussion for docket 2399?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Well,
Yeah, and the garage predates 1956. It's been there a long
Right,
time.
right.
It's a
Yeah.
contributing building.
Yeah.
yes.
It's an exceptional.
Well, and I think there's something of a hardship in that if you look at the lay of the land here, if you move it over the required distance, first of all, your driveway no longer is even close to where it needs to be.
Right.
And you encroach upon a patio area. It really is a hardship to try to, you're talking about re-landscaping and re-pouring a driveway rather than allowing an existing building to be brought into this century. And frankly, I think that's a reasonable hardship.
Yeah, and I think since you've had the city out there to look at this and they've, said, yeah, you look good on everything. And I do realize that shifting this is gonna create a hardship for you.
Any other comments? We'll call the question then. All in favor of docket 2399, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? John, would you poll the board?
Debbie Solberg.
Aye.
John Burris is aye. BJ Pupelo.
Aye.
Charles Janicki.
Aye.
Randy Sprick.
Aye.
Your request has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next step. Thank you very much. John, would you please read docket 2400 into the record?
A petition submitted by Greg and Leanne Markovitz for an application for variance from section 53.043C1 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 7.7 feet from the minimum required 12-foot west side yard setback in order to construct a retractable awning on the existing structure that will be located 4.3 feet from the west side lot line at the subject property. The property is located at 457 Yorkshire Place within the A1 20,000 square foot residence district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager?
Before we begin, I would ask that exhibits 1 through 9 listed there be included as part of the record for the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you very much.
We would call Mara Perry to testify.
Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 457 Yorkshire Place?
Yes, I am.
Is that within city limits?
Yes, it is.
In which zoning district?
The A1 20,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2400?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 7.7 feet from the minimum required 12-foot west side yard setback in order to construct a retractable awning on the existing structure that would be located 4.3 feet from the west side lot line at the subject property.
Which municipal code sections apply to this request?
The code section is 53.043, A1 dimensional regulations C, side yard setback. The minimum side yard setback shall be established in the following manner. Item 1, there shall be a side yard on each side of the building having a width of not less than 12 feet.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes, the property is located on a corner. The house was built in 1927 and the garage also in 1927. The house and the garage were built pretty close to that side property line. The house does meet and slightly exceed the required 12-foot side yard setback. Due to the orientation of the lot, the rear yard is technically to the right side of the house when you're looking at the front door. And there's the secondary front yard, or the primary front yard is actually the side of the house when looking at the front door on the left-hand side. There is a patio located on the back of the house, which is located in the side yard. And the applicant had requested to pull a permit to build a retractable awning to cover over the existing patio. This is a rendering just of the type of awning that is being proposed. Here is a diagram that shows a little bit better what is being requested. So the back of the house, which you can see there, the blue is the area where the awning would, when fully extended, thank you. It would go all the way out to within 4.3 feet of the side property line. And the required code says 12 feet. The applicant and I both looked at options for doing it as an accessory structure, but you have to be 10 feet away from the primary structure and then 5 feet away from the property line. And that essentially left you with this very narrow, long, thin piece that could maybe extend a roof a little bit out in both directions. So the property also, I'm just going to identify here, again, this is not necessarily to scale, but it kind of shows from the wall of the house about where the 12-foot setback would be and then where the 4.3-foot setback would be. There are photographs in your packet to identify and show this patio again, it's the side yard, but acts as the rear of the house, and the location of that existing patio in relationship to the house.
Got it.
Does anyone have any additional questions for Mara?
I'm just curious, Mara, if you could shed a little bit more light on retractable awnings and, I know there's a lot of specific language about setbacks and porches and,
Yeah. It's odd. So the way that the code works, it allows you to extend no more than 2 feet with any appendage, whether it's extension of the roof line, whether it's belt courses, other small things are allowed to extend no more than 2 feet beyond any building line. So there is potentially, we kind of talked about where that structure would end and at what point in time, and there wasn't anything that further defined something like a retractable awning. So it was pretty unusual. And so to cover all the bases, because of the fact that I couldn't approve anything with any structural columns anywhere beyond that edge of the house. It had to meet the 12-foot setback. So everything that we were looking at with all the different options of what they were doing, really nothing was covering the patio in any way, shape or form, more than, again, a couple feet out slightly. There's also a set of stairs that go down with the house. So, staff looked at all various options multiple times with different things, but there isn't anything specific regarding the retractable. But, if that's attached to the structure, it's permanent, not temporary. Anything that's less than 30 days
Even
is
though it's
considered.
retractable.
Yes, anything less than 30 days is considered temporary. So it's attached to the house as a permanent element. I know, it's,
These codes were not written for retractable awnings.
we're not written for
They didn't
retractable
have
awnings.
those in 1956.
But when it's not retracted or not in the out position, it's less than 2 feet.
Correct,
Right.
correct. So it is, it's the,
It's
Yeah.
occasionally violating the code.
Right.
exactly.
Well, it depends on how often they, okay.
That's right.
We'll ask the applicant how often they intend to use it. No, I'm kidding. If we don't have any more questions for Mara on 2400, we'll move on. Who's here tonight in favor of docket 2400? Please, raise your right hand, state your name, and
Greg Markovitz.
do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, John, as you were asking similar questions, these are many of the questions that Mara and I talked about. Well, it's retracted, but is that, is it fitting within code or not? We had actually looked last year at doing a retractable or louvered roof. That would require, a more permanent solution with posts that would extend, close to, what we're asking for now. So that seemed a lot more complicated. So we thought maybe going this route would be folks would be a little bit more amenable to this solution, considering that it can't be extended all the time. It can't be extended during times of inclement weather. We're just looking for a little bit of reprieve from, light rain, the sun. We face west, so we get beat up pretty badly by the sun in the summers as well. So there just aren't that many options. We can't construct anything significant based on the amount of space or the lack of space that we have in our backyard.
Now I have a question. My sister used to own a house that had a retractable awning, but I don't remember. Can you extend it some, but not the whole way?
I'm not sure. I suppose you could. I'm not sure structurally the way the arms are built, if it can be,
Partially.
extended all the way or partially.
I
I'm
used to
certain.
have one where you could have, I had one that was 18 feet long and I extended out 10 feet. And you could go out 5 feet or 6 feet. You could adjust it.
Okay,
So depending on how much activity you have on the patio,
Right.
it might.
correct. Right.
Can I, so as I see the drawings, the actual awning itself certainly does not exceed the footprint of the patio.
That's correct.
So it's within the footprint on both sides, I believe, and deep.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yes. So yes, it will not extend past the actual,
Yes.
yeah,
I-
they actually don't, well, that I could find, they don't even make ones that are wider than
Than
the
that,
width of
yes.
our patio. So.
We looked as well. So, and there's no really way to move that patio to another place. I mean, that's not possible within the structure of your home.
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a pretty wooded area you got behind your
Yeah.
patio
It
there,
is. So between our neighbors, that we look into their yard, yeah, there's a set of 3 4 now significant evergreens.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we barely we see the tops of each other's roofs at this point.
Right. And we do have the letter from your neighbors. Is that your affected neighbor?
Yes, it is.
Anyone else have any more questions for Mr. Markovit?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience or online? I guess they'd have to be online who's in favor of docket 2400? Is there anyone opposed to docket 2400? Hearing none and seeing none, the board will move to closed session to discuss executive session now. Do we have a motion regarding docket 2400? Second? Okay. Well, I think that we have a hardship of the placement of the house. And this seems to be a non, in my opinion, a non-obtrusive way of providing them some additional comfort and use of their patio without permanently encroaching into the setback, because, chances are they're going to extend it when they're going to use it, or maybe in the hot days of the summer to keep that part of the house a little cooler, but not anywhere near 24/7.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable request, and I agree with you, Debbie. The hardship is the position of the house on the lot, but
Right.
if this were a normal backyard, we wouldn't be here this evening.
Yeah, the permanent solution just doesn't.
Well,
seem
Now,
to
if it
work.
breaks down and a
Yeah.
couple of columns sprout
Yeah.
up
Well,
underneath the
yeah.
corners of the awning.
No, and I,
Yeah.
and I agree. I think this is a very reasonable solution to what, a permanent structure would be much more difficult to deal with. And you know what, if we're gonna set a precedent, because you do that when you do these things for retractable awnings, I think this is a reasonable precedent to set. And that doesn't bother me. I think you have to be very careful, but I think in this case, it makes sense and it's a reasonable precedent to set.
Anyone else make any comments before we vote? All in favor of docket 2400, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? John, would you please poll the board?
Yes, Debbie Solberg.
Aye.
John Burris. Aye. BJ Pupolo.
Aye.
Randy Sprague.
Aye.
Charles Janicki.
Aye.
Your variance has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you. Would you please, John, would you please read docket 2401 into the record?
Absolutely. A petition submitted by Jenny Gasso, JG Design Studio, on behalf of Kathy Grosh for an application for variance from section 53.073C1 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.8 feet from the minimum required 6-foot south side yard setback in order to construct a 2-story addition on the existing structure that will be located 4.2 feet from the south side lot line at the subject property. The property is located at 114 Jersey Avenue within the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager, is the petitioner's representative online?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Mr. Bontrager?
Before presenting our case, I would ask that exhibits 1 through 9 listed on the screen there be included in the record for the purposes of this hearing.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
We would call Mara Perry to testify. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 114 Jersey Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that within city limits?
Yes, it is.
In which zoning district is it located?
The A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2401?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.8 feet from the minimum required 6-foot south side yard setback in order to construct a 2-story addition on the existing structure that will be located 4.2 feet from the south side lot line at the subject property.
Which municipal code sections apply to this request?
The code section that applies is 53.073, A4 dimensional regulations, letter C, side yard setback. The minimum side yard setback shall be established in the following manner. There should be a side yard setback on each side of the building, having a width of not less than 6 feet for residential structures and 10 feet for non-residential structures.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes, the existing conditions, the house was built in 1928. You can see in the site plan that was provided by the architect, the existing residence sits very, very close to the south side yard property line. The 4.2 feet is actually the dimension of the primary wall of the house, but actually the house has a bay window,
Mm.
which puts it even closer to the side property line than that 4.2 feet. The house itself, and you'll see in your photographs in the packet, is located on a pretty sloped yard that has a tuck under garage. Staff listed this as a 2-story addition only because there is a portion of the structure that technically is sort of tucked into the ground.
Mm.
But depending on other calculations, I wanted to make sure we were covering our bases on the full section of the addition being proposed. The side yard setback is required to be 6 feet in this zoning district. The requested setback is the 4.2 feet in line with the existing primary part of the wall. There are some elevations that are provided in the packet that identify a little bit the slope of the land. And in particular, so this is the rear elevation with the proposed addition. And you can see the 4.2 feet for the proposed addition, and then the 6 foot. The photographs, I think, pretty clearly show, you can see that there's a tuck under garage that is a part of the house. There's a series of retaining walls, and the back side of the house you can see is sort of tucked into some of the land.
Mm.
So the request is to be able to do an addition that is in line with the south side of the existing house.
Anything else said?
Nothing else.
Does anyone have any questions for Laura?
Thanks.
All right. Who's here tonight or who's online tonight for docket 2401?
I'm promoting Jenny Gasso to panelist, so she will be on. Yep, there she is. And then if she can unmute.
There she is.
Hi,
Hi. Jenny, would you please raise your right hand, state your name, and I'll swear you in?
hi.
Jenny, okay, Jenny Gasso, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for your time tonight. So essentially, there's 2 issues with this site that sort of provides the hardship for the homeowner. The first one is the topography. And currently they have, I believe it was prior to 2010, I want to say. If you look at attachment 3, the image, at some point there was an addition put on and there was a tuck under garage on the front of their house.
Yeah.
That was put on by the previous owner. It'd be all well and good if it wasn't flooding all the time and they had access from the house into the garage. So the only way they can get from the garage is up all these retaining walls. So the goal was to make it usable and to help them with the issues that they have with stormwater. So the goal for that is to move the garage to the back so that we can create almost like a retaining along that south property line and align those foundations up. So basically we can regrade along that narrow sliver and force the water out and kick it into the backyard where there's currently, which is another hardship for them, an MSD inlet. So they have the low point in the street, so in that area, so they collect a lot of stormwater. So currently their front yard is majorly retained to get into that existing driveway, which they can't really use. And then their backyard, as you can see in the other images, is completely terraced so that they can use their yard. So the goal would be to create this tuck under garage that aligns with that south facade that's existing and create just sort of one seamless facade that would serve as retaining. And then they could regrade the area so that they could have their driveway and everything back out, and they can put their driveway over that MSD line in that area of their property, which they would be able to build over there. Because if you look at the survey, the inlet's in the middle of their yard, but it comes in from the front yard. So
Mm.
that whole side yard is not usable. So they've got a lot of stormwater, not an area where they can improve on the front because of this, the stormwater. And they have all these retained areas that makes their their property just basically, if you can picture a rock in a river, that is what their house is like when it's raining. From all around, every side, the water's curling into their yard. So we're trying to sort of get it along the south as best we can and into the yard and curl around into that inlet. So that's kind of our approach. And so we're not asking for anything more than what the existing house is already situated off the existing property line. So we're not changing that side yard setback. We're just extending it.
I have a question, Jenny. I'm not sure this is really germane to the variance. I'm just curious. So are they going to remove the existing driveway and build a driveway further north to get to the back of the house? Or are
Yeah,
they
so that existing garage is they're gonna regrade the front of their yard
Mhm.
so that they don't have that garage door.
Mhm.
And they're gonna fill in the concrete and maybe even put in a window at the foundation. And then they're gonna regrade the front and then put in a new driveway that goes along the side yard, further away from the front porch. It hugs that side yard property line. And then, and it becomes a parking pad so they can back out from the new garage.
Okay.
So the new addition is a tuck under garage with a family room above it.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're not building the new driveway over the MSD sewer line?
Actually, we are not. It's, you can
Good.
see it. Yeah,
Right.
on the survey. It's just outside, but it's just enough space that they can get the driveway in. So that's the good thing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've had to deal with those situations before, so yeah, if you can stay away from them, that's a good idea. Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Gasso?
No.
Is there anyone else in favor of docket 2401?
There's no one else online. I am gonna move Jenny back over to be able to continue to observe.
Okay.
But then, no, there is no one else.
All right, thank you. And since there's no one online, there's no one in opposition of docket 2401 either. The board will now move to executive session so we can discuss this. Can we have a motion for docket 2401 so we can start discussion?
I would move approval of docket 2401.
Second? Okay, well, I think that this is, we certainly have a number of houses in Webster Groves that do not meet the current setback, and this board has been reasonably consistent in granting variances when you are not extending further into a side yard that you don't meet for a building addition. I think this falls into that category.
I would agree. I think the position of the house on the lot is a hardship.
Right.
But more than that, in many ways, I think the fact that they had the drainage issues with a
Right.
big grate in their backyard
Yes.
Limits the
Limits where they
limits
could put
what
an
they could
addition.
possibly do.
It limits where they could put an
Yeah,
addition that would be workable.
Right, and I do agree with you very much. I think it's both position of the house and just the topography makes it a very much of a hardship.
Oh, yeah, it's a very difficult site. It's very challenging. Definitely.
Anyone else have any comments? Okay, all in favor of docket 2401, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Oh.
Um,
Sorry.
Would you please poll the board?
Absolutely. BJ Pupolo. Aye. Charles Jenkins.
Aye.
Deb Salvo.
Aye.
Andy Sprague.
Aye.
And John Versus aye as well.
Your request has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours. Thank you very much. Is there any other business before the board tonight? Our next meeting will be Thursday, November 9th. I assume, do we know?
Two,
Okay.
two applications came in today, so you will have two items next month.
Do we want to talk about having it earlier
Request.
at 6:30 again on the 9th?
I thought we'd discuss the possibility of keeping it at 6:30. Gets us done faster.
I actually prefer it if everyone else does. I'm very adaptable, but I
Yeah,
like 6:30.
I like 6:30. I go to bed early, so. you know. Be real honest.
Well, I can do next month at 6:30 and then you guys can confirm again. Usually that's around the month that I start putting the calendar together for the new year.
Right.
Okay.
So if we want to continue to keep it at 6:30, I can get it set up for the whole new year at that day and time, or at that time. That would be great. But I want you to have another one. I mean, that'll be the third one in a row that we've done at 6:30 and you can see how that works.
See if you like it.
See if we like it during.
So here's the
savings
question.
time.
During, oh, yeah,
So here's the question. Do you like it at 6:30?
yes.
Okay, just asking.
Would you like it more at 5:30?
I'm good with 6:30.
Okay, okay.
Fair enough.
Can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody have a nice Halloween.
Yes.